to Impolite Company on the GCPR.live network, a show where we do what the old adage is, what they say that you can't do. You're not supposed to talk about religion and politics in polite company. Well, if that's the case, then I guess we're impolite, right? I'm your host, Matthew Best, and together we walk through some honest dialogue, explore some really messy truths, and try to see the humanity and perspectives different from our own. So if you have a thought or question or something to challenge, hey, feel free to email me, contactimpolitecompany@gmail.com. Don't forget you can subscribe to past and future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Impolite Company, look for the logo, it's behind me. And if you want to dig deeper into the themes we explore here, you can visit my blog at pastormatthewbest.com. And if you appreciate what we do and want to support it, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/impolite company. So we're going to dive into today's conversation. I don't have a guest for today because I want to do a monologue on a variety of topics that I've been wanting to talk about and are in the news. Some that you're probably familiar with and you probably have thoughts about, and some that you may not be as familiar with. And you may have some initial reactions, whatnot. So I want to talk a little bit about Charlie Kirk. I want to talk about, we'll see if we get to even the second topic, which is a memorandum. This was issued back in July from the Office of Personnel Management about proselytizing it says that protecting religious expression in the federal workplace. And I want to, at the very least, talk about how we go forward. So that's so nice, easy topics, right? Yeah. Anyway, what's the point of talking about something if it's just going to be nice and easy? So that's what we're going to focus on today. Kind of timely. Of course, I know that there are some memorials going on for Charlie Kirk today, so I know this is a touchy topic for a variety of reasons. And I thought I could, I don't know if I'm adding anything to this or not, but I think it's important to talk about. And here's why. Because I think there's at least two different Charlie Kirks. And which one that you're familiar with, if you're familiar with him at all. I mean, I know there are folks who never heard of him before he was assassinated. I know there are some people who are very familiar with him. But for the folks who, I think there's a variety of different Charlie Kirks, and at least two. And what I mean by that is depending on what your media silo is, will determine which Charlie Kirk that you were familiar with. There's I guess you could classify him, some people would classify him this way. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. There were some people who would classify him as a Christian inspirational speaker, Charlie Kirk. That's what some people would that's their encounter with him. And he was usually offering some kind of theological opinion or something of that nature. And then there's what some people would say the white Christian nationalist Charlie Kirk, mostly speaking on political topics. So the problem that exists, and the reason why we're seeing a range and often really conflict over Charlie Kirk, is because people have been exposed to two different Charlie Kirks, if not more. And those different Charlie Kirks are not congruent with each other, to be perfectly honest. And I want to talk about that because I think that's really important. I will confess that congruency is extremely important to me. What you say, what you claim, and all that type of stuff, and what you do, if they're not matching up, I gotta ask why? Why? What is going on? What's why? How I struggle with people that I perceive as not being congruent. Um, so before we go any further, let's just say this: violence is not the answer. It's an answer. It's not a good answer. It's a terrible answer. I do not condone violence. In fact, when I get to the break, I'm going to tell you about a book that I'm one of the authors of, one who came up with the idea, American Roulette, which really kind of condemns the idea of using violence, especially using a weapon. I do not condone violence. I'm a nonviolent person. I don't care who it is that we're talking about. Violence is not the answer, and political violence honestly makes things worse. I if there's grief that I think can go across the board for this, it would be for Mr. Kirk's family, for his widow, and for his children who will not have a father. I think that's very appropriate, and that would be the case for anyone who dies as a result of gun violence, especially, but any type of violence. I've been consistent with that gun violence, in some ways, what are we valuing? Are we valuing the right to be able to kill somebody over keeping people alive? We have a problem in this country, and it goes way deeper than political division and all of that. We have some serious problems as far as what do we value, and then what are we willing to actually do related to that. That's a different topic. Let's get back to Charlie Kirk. So condone violence. Yeah, I do not. It's just horrible, horrible, right? And it does not help. Makes things worse. Continues a cycle of violence because now there needs to be retribution, and then whoever suffers from that is their loved ones are going to do the exact same thing, and on it goes. It's a cycle of violence. So we have, I'm going to say, two different Charlie Kirks. And I want to read some statements. I want to read statements that are attributed to him. And there are sources that go with this. You can find these. This is not difficult type of stuff to do, right? So let's start on the one side. And then I also want to bring in a statement from the Congressional Black Caucus as well. And there was somebody who had posted it. I lost who had posted this, but they had an additional comment, so I can't take credit for that. But I think what this other person had to say was also important in the conversation. So I want to read a couple of quotes, and because the reason why I want to talk about this is because I have contacts and I have friends who are in both have encountered, let's just say, have encountered both Charlie Kirks. Not that they've encountered both Charlie Kirks, but one has been siloed into one version of Charlie Kirk, and one has been siloed into another version of Charlie Kirk. And so I think it's important to talk about this. So a couple of the quotes. So this one is from, it was on Fox News. Charlie Kirk answered, "How do you want to be remembered?" Also reported elsewhere in the news after his death. So the bigger context is in a podcast interview called the Iced Coffee Hour, and this was on June 29th of this year when asked how he'd like to be remembered if everything else goes completely away. This is what he said. "I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. Most important thing is my faith." Okay. Second, this is a source is from Crosswalk. There's an article that apparently it's titled "9 Inspiring Charlie Kirk Quotes About Jesus, Faith, and the Bible." And this was posted on X, formerly Twitter, on September 6th of this year, a few days before his death. It's part of a set of quotes collected around his faith. And this is what he said: Jesus defeated death so you can live. Okay. Uh, there was Eternal Perspectives Ministry, had a blog, and he had some Instagram statements that they pulled from, and it has him quoted as saying, "I believe in the Bible, and I believe that Christ rose from the dead on the third day. This is the foundation of my faith and guides my actions." Okay. Um, Another article from Eternal Perspectives Ministry: Jesus Christ, and this is from a Charisma magazine quoting him. Okay. Jesus Christ was God in human flesh, who first and foremost taught us how to live, and secondly, and most importantly, he was a gift to us that if we accept him as our Lord and Savior, then we can have eternal life. I'm going through these because I want people to understand that there are two different Charlie Kirks and they are incongruent with each other. And depending on which silo that your information is going to depend on which Charlie Kirk that you encountered, for lack of a better way of describing it. Because I'm trying to get people to understand, why are there some people who are mourning? Well, if these are the type of quotes that you're hearing, and that's all that you're hearing, and you did not know some of the stuff that I'm going to get to, then hopefully maybe you can understand a little bit of why people would be. This is not to make excuses. I'm trying to get to the heart of why people are. I think Charlie Kirk is a symptom of something much bigger. So let's keep going. Another Crosswalk article. This one's from a 2025 interview discussing what he sees as positive conservative social values, and he said you have to try to point them towards ultimate purposes and toward getting back to the church, getting back to faith, getting married, having children. This is the type of conservatism that I represent, and I'm trying to paint a picture of virtue, lifting people up, not just staying angry. That's one of his quotes. Another one, again from that same article, it says, I'm nothing without Jesus. I'm a sinner. I fall incredibly short of the glory of God. We all do. I gave my life to the Lord in fifth grade, and it's the most important decision I ever made, and everything I do incorporates Jesus Christ. I'm not going to argue the theology on this. This is not the point. Obviously, this is a decision theology thing going on here. Um, Again, same thing in China, and of course in the Soviet Union, there was anti-Christian movement, very hardcore. What book do you think is best for humanity to live by? I say the Bible. The entire arc of the Bible is a story of love and a need for humanity's redemption. The Bible has wisdom in ways you might not ever imagine. Humanity will seek to find a book. They'll seek to find a code to live by, and I think it's incumbent upon atheists to tell us what that should be. Again, another quote: "The mechanisms of religious society are good for everyone. When somebody walks around and thinks they're created and that you're not God, you tend to have better citizens." And I'll do one more. Jesus Christ was God in human flesh, who first and foremost taught us how to live, and secondly, and most importantly, he was a gift to us. I already got that one. All right, that's one version of Charlie Kirk. Seems pretty harmless. Sounds like someone who's sincere in their faith. Sounds, now I could certainly have debates about some of the theology um, in here. There's, especially when you get into, again, reading beyond what's said, there's some things that certainly worthy of debate. This is one version of Charlie Kirk, and there are a lot of people who this is their only encounter with Charlie Kirk. Christian inspirational speaker Charlie Kirk. And That's what they're mourning. That's what they're mourning. That's what some people are mourning. Let's go to the other Charlie Kirk. Again, I think this is important to talk about. It's not easy to talk about, especially in light of we have a society that's extremely divided. And well, I'm going to stop there for right now. So the other Charlie Kirk, that there have been some people who have called him white Christian nationalist Charlie Kirk. Some people have called him far worse based on the things that he said. So, story in Reuters. He was asked at a speaking event. This was right at the where the shooting happened. Right there, he was at a crowd in Utah at the university there, and the question was asked about shootings, and so it says this was asked at a speaking event. Kirk replied, "Too many." Fact checkers say the data does not support there being many related to what was it? The In response to the question, do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years? His response was too many. Um, and so the criticism is this is considered misleading because uh, it's a extremely small percentage, especially compared to straight white men in their 20s, which is the vast majority of perpetrators of mass shootings. That's just a statistical reality. The second one, again, this is a Reuters article. He was talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. He made it as an expression of suspicion or distrust based on race in the context of arguments about qualifications. So this is what his quote on DEI programs. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. That's what he said. Um, Again, Reuters, you can find this elsewhere. His comments about, he said that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a huge mistake. Um, uh, there's a section on him actually in Wikipedia, which, okay, so that's questionable. Talking about immigration, demographic change, those type of things. He said the Great Replacement theory is not a theory, it's a reality. If you don't know what the Great Replacement, it's a conspiracy theory that, boy, you can Google it. Um, uh, what was it? No, again, multiple sources: Reuters, Los Angeles Times, etc. These are from speeches, podcasts, or public events, often in religious, political contexts. And he was using biblical verses and arguing his position. So, like on transgender issues, he likened transgender identity to blackface, calling gender fluidity or transgenderism, quote, lies that hurt people, abuse kids, calls for ban on gender affirming care, etc. Um, so that's just a small selection. I did a small selection of both of these Charlie Kirks. Um, I want to bring in the what was said about this. So, like I said, the Congressional Black Caucus issued a statement on Charlie Kirk resolution, and it came out on September 19th, so just a couple days ago. And this is what they said: violence has no place in our politics, whether it is the murder of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman, January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol or the killing of Charlie Kirk. We must unequivocally reject violence in all its forms. Too many times in our nation's history, political difference has turned to violence, violence that our community in particular knows too well, from the assassination of Black leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers, and Fred Hampton, among others. At the same time, we must condemn violence without abandoning our right to speak out against ideas that are inconsistent with our values as Americans. We strongly disagree with many of the beliefs Charlie Kirk promoted, including his belief that the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended racial segregation, was a mistake, his denial that systemic racism exists, his promotion of the Great Replacement theory, and his offensive claims about Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, um, Michelle Obama, and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee lacking adequate cognitive ability. The resolution introduced in the House to honor Charlie Kirk's legacy is not about healing, lowering the temperature of a political discourse, or even ensuring the safety of members of Congress, staff, and Capitol personnel. It is unfortunately an attempt to legitimize Kirk's worldview, a worldview that includes ideas many Americans find racist, harmful, and fundamentally un-American. In the wake of this tragedy, President Trump has senselessly threatened to go after the quote political left. The American people are tired of this kind of cynical politics. It's disheartening to see a tragedy used to further divide the country and suppress honest debate. As the conscience of the Congress, the CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, has a responsibility to speak out against this on behalf of our communities, and we're calling on each of our colleagues to share our views, to follow suit. Enough is enough. So that's the statement from the Congressional Black Caucus on the Charlie Kirk resolution in the House. Um, I saw somebody had posted about that, and what their comment was, and again, I wish I remembered who I saw, but I don't, so I apologize for that. Is that they said that there was a chasm between Black and white America. That they said that racism is not a deal breaker for white America. And then they went on to some other stuff. I think this is speaking to a lot of things, not just about Charlie Kirk, but a variety of larger issues in this country, of divide, of worldviews, of values, of um, all sorts of all sorts of things. Um, Again, I'm struck by the reality that there's this one person, but depending on what media silo that you're in, will determine which version you had of him. That's part of just what media is. It gives us more of what we want, but it's also, I think, a bigger thing is more disturbing. Is why did somebody have such incongruity? Is that a word? I don't even know. Why is this person saying one thing? I, I give him credit. There's a few statements here. The first group of statements that where is it here? Let's see if I can find it. There's a couple of statements that I was like, okay, I can get on board with that. Um, yeah, let's see if I can find it. Uh, where is that? I believe in the Bible, and I believe that Christ rose from the dead on the third day. This is the foundation of my faith and guides my actions. That could be something that I could say. However, at the same time, how do you say that and then talk about the Great Replacement theory? Or say that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is a huge mistake? Or if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. I don't know. I have no idea how. I can't make that work. I'm struggling with that. uh, because there's a lot of people who, to some degree, every human being struggles with congruency. Um, I think that's partially human. At the same time, um, wow, there are people that, and I think that some of this gets into the language that we use. Um, I've talked about this before. This is really important. Did a whole podcast on church language, right? So you can't just take these phrases, you can't just take these statements on the surface. Um, what do I mean by that? I would like to know. And of course, you can't ask them now. Like the statement that I read, where is it here? I believe in the Bible. I believe in that Christ rose from the dead on the third day. This is the foundation of my faith and guides my actions. I would ask, well, could you define some terms for me? I'm proposing that in this country, a lot of us speak English, but we're not speaking the same language. We're not even close to the same language. I think this is part of what we're experiencing in our larger culture is that everybody's using the same words but have very different meanings, and oftentimes those meanings are in direct conflict with each other, of how they're being used, and we're all assuming that we all have the same definition, and we don't. This is a reality: is that we do not have the same definitions of the words that we're using. We're speaking them in English, but we're not speaking the same language. We're not even close to the same language. When there are people on any range of issues and they're claiming God, is it possible that God could be in conflict with God's self? Because that's about oftentimes what's happening. If God is really on this side and this side, then God is conflicted with God's self. This becomes a problem. Popular example would be the word freedom. Everybody likes to claim the word freedom. Everybody likes to use the word freedom, and we make a bad assumption that we're all talking about the same thing. We're not. We're not talking about the same thing. Let's just be honest. We do not share definitions across spectrums. We use language with an understanding of how we understand it without having an understanding of how somebody else is using it, which I think is why we end up with these type of situations. There are some who see freedom as the freedom is without limitation. Freedom has responsibility. Freedom, some people will say freedom doesn't have responsibilities. I would define that more as license to do whatever you want. That's not exactly freedom. That's not the same thing. And some people would say, I'm free to impose upon you. So freedom from imposition and freedom to impose, that's another version of how freedom is used. Puritans believe that. Christian nationalists believe in the freedom to impose. You get into all sorts of theological debates about those type of things. Um, yeah. So I think given all the stuff that I've just said, there's no solution to this, by the way. I don't propose to offer any kind of solution. I appreciate and I stand with what the Congressional Black Caucus is saying. That you of course condemn violence and you can condemn it across the board. So yeah, I condemn violence against Charlie Kirk. I condemn violence that was done in January 6th, and I condemn violence of the assassination of the Minnesota state representative. I condemn the violence of mass shootings. Um, I condemn the violence of destroying boats in international waters. Like there's a whole range of stuff. It's not the answer. It's an answer. It's not a good answer, and it just creates more problems. And at the same time, the statements that are attributed to him are horrible about, they're not good statements, to say the least. It's not helpful, and it's not congruent. It's not congruent with the Christian inspirational statements that if Jesus is the center and that's gonna who's gonna guide your actions and whatnot, then how does that match up? It doesn't. I don't know how that matches up. I don't see and I don't understand how you can say this from the Christian perspective and then turn around and your politics is in opposition to what you just said. There's a lot of people that do that. I don't know how they sleep at night. I don't know how they look at themselves in the mirror. I don't know how you do that. But again, I'm making an assumption. I'm making an assumption that the version of Jesus that I'm talking about condemns violence, that says love your neighbor, that says care for the poor, that says welcome the stranger, and actually means it. And that's what you're supposed to do. And that there's congruency that goes across. It's not that faith is one compartment of life. And then over here in politics, we get to do whatever else and we follow something else. I don't know what that is. If we're going to have faith and we're going to follow Jesus, then it kind of takes over your life. It's not a compartment. We don't get to put Jesus in a box after we're done with worship on Sunday morning. And then we get to do whatever we want in politics, and it could be completely contradictory to what Jesus is talking about. Um, that makes no sense to me. I don't get it. I don't know how to comprehend the compartmentalization of faith. Maybe somebody can explain that to me. I'm still going to have a hard time really accepting that. If faith is just some compartment, then what's the point of it? There is no point if it's just going to be a compartment of somebody's life. And it can just be put away and just pulled out when it's convenient, pulled out for Sunday morning, but the rest of the time, you don't have to do it. Is that what Jesus came here for? Just, for a couple hours a week or something like that when it's convenient and you just pull them out when it's convenient. This is my reaction to that. So I'm struggling with this. Um, Makes no sense. Um, Let me take a short break here. And so before we continue, again, I like to highlight a couple of things that I'm passionate about that are close to my heart. The first is the church that I'm called to serve, which is Christ Lutheran Church here in Allison Hill in Harrisburg. Um, it's a it's an amazing church, amazing congregation in a very challenged section of Harrisburg. So I think I saw that it was this zip code is one of the five most economically challenged zip codes in the eastern half of Pennsylvania. It's also more than a congregation. It's a healing community, and that's legit. We host 3 free health clinics that have welcomed over 100,000 visits since 2018. There's a medical outreach clinic, there's a dental clinic, and there's a clinic that's hosted by a licensed nurse practitioner. No insurance. When people come, they get asked, what's your name or what do you want to be called and what's going on? That's our entire intake because we're here to try and help people. So if you want to know more, you want to learn more, you want to come for a visit, a tour, I'm happy to do that. You can go to christharrisburg.org. You want to support what we're doing, you can click that donate button. It's thank you in advance. There's a lot of amazing things that goes on here. Second, the Memorial Blanket Project, something I've been involved in each year. And since the very beginning, one of the co-founders, people from all over the country and even now places from across the world create blankets for strangers and we turn them into a massive art installation that draws attention to homelessness. And then at the end of the night, every blanket is given away. Thousands of blankets over the last 4 years. Thousands of blankets. It's amazing. This year, heading to Denver to do this. So you can learn more at memorialblanket.org. And finally, as I mentioned earlier in the show, you can if you want a resource to help with a conversation around the difficult topic of gun violence, check out American Roulette. You can find it wherever books are sold. It's a novel written in a novel way. Uh, and we don't offer answers. We focus on the humanity. Even the perpetrator is human. If we're ever going to change, if we're ever going to find resolution for gun violence, it starts by seeing the humanity. I think that's what I'm getting back to the show here. I think that's the struggle with this. Um, is that Charlie Kirk is now becoming uh, an abstract issue rather than human, and it's a struggle. I'm not trying to make excuses for him. I never met the man. All I have are the things that I read to you. Um, I do want to talk about how we go forward. I'm going to skip over the federal ruling on proselytizing in federal buildings. That could be its own show, honestly. But it does relate. Like so much of what's going on is all interrelated and interconnected. Um, and I do want to get to that at some point. So at some point we will do that. But I want to talk about how where how do we go forward? Is there a forward? I don't know. But I want to talk about this because I think this is again, this is important. Uh, I I think, and I could be completely wrong on this, that there are three main problems that we face in society. If you're going to group things, right? And of course, being a Christian pastor, three, yay, of course, right? Um, I think there are three kind of main chunks of challenges that we face as an American society. And a lot of things fit together in this, right? So these are kind of broad categories, and a lot of things can fall under them, right? And you may have your own version of what are the problems that we face. I think there's a lot of stuff. So here's what my attempt to kind of name this is, right? Again, could be way off. This is kind of what I observe. Number one, healthcare. And what do I mean by that? Because that's a broad term. I don't mean just like going to the doctor, that type of thing, or just insurance. Those are part of the challenge and of what we have, right? For-profit insurance and a healthcare system. I mean, here's the reality: is that we have free clinics at this church. Uh, that should tell you that there's a problem in our healthcare system when the healthcare system has people that are falling through the cracks and end up at a church door to get healthcare. Um, Healthcare is something that I see a lot of issue. Um, we're also talking about mental health, which as a society, we had just recently been kind of acknowledging that we have a problem with mental health care and the lack of mental health care in this in this country. And it's extremely complicated, of course, right? There's not nice, easy type of solutions with this. There's not nice, easy ways to kind of package all of this. Um, I put in family dynamics as a part of healthcare as well. If you, I did an AI question of the number of people who I forgot the exact wording, but the number of people who are somehow connected with dysfunctional families. You get the idea of what I was asking. And the response came back that some studies show that 70 to 80% of Americans come from dysfunctional families. Boom, mind-boggling. Holy cow, 70 to 80%. And that's just Americans. So I don't know what that looks like on the world stage. Come from dysfunctional families. Now, of course, we have to get into, well, what's dysfunctional and what's dysfunctional versus what's abusive and what percentage may be abusive versus what percentage is dysfunctional. Is 70 to 80% actually accurate? I don't know. There are some experts who say that. I'm sure there are some experts who probably put the number a little bit lower. Those are serious questions. Those are good questions. But at the same time, if that's the percentage of people who have some kind of contact with dysfunction, no wonder we have problems. No wonder our society is so screwed up. No wonder there is abuse in a variety of different ways. No wonder there's domestic violence. No wonder we have gun violence. No wonder we have a drug problem. No wonder we have road rage. No wonder we have an education system that is just taxed because they're trying to deal with just basic things of survival for kids. No wonder we have workplaces that are also dysfunctional and churches that are dysfunctional. No wonder we have financial messes. No wonder we have theologies that attempt to offer a sense of control, right? More fundamentalist, some evangelical offer these kind of theologies that are really about making everything very simple, us, them, black and white, clear A and B type of things, and you need to follow this or else, and that type of thing. It offers a sense of control. Well, of course, if you come from a dysfunctional background, anything that looks orderly and control is going to be appealing because it offers something that you've been lacking. Um, so healthcare, again, big bundle, big label. I'm throwing all of that in together. This is one of our big problems that we face as a society. And these are not ranked as far as which is bigger. I think that doesn't honestly matter. They're interrelated. I don't think you can rank one above the other for any of these type of things. The second grouping of problems that we face as a society is affordability. And again, this is a broad thing. What are we talking about? Well, just go through your own life. Stuff is expensive. It's affordable. What's affordable? Because I guarantee a whole lot of wages aren't keeping up with that. Right? So whether we're talking about healthcare, which is extremely expensive, like we have healthcare, and then we still have out of pocket costs, which I'm like, why do I have healthcare if I still have all these out of pocket costs? Like the affordability of that. Food, housing. So there are counties in Pennsylvania where the housing has gone way skyrocketed. Not affordable for people who are working. How is make it make sense? People have full-time jobs and they can't afford the housing. What? Make it make sense. Gas, just living. Just living. The cost of things, affordability. That's a huge second problem that we have. When people can't afford things, it leads to a lot of other problems. Um, and then there's debt, and then there's all sorts of stuff that goes on with that. The third, and this one is a little more abstract, and it's harder to kind of put flesh and bones on. I call it trust. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about institutions in our society, you're right. You have church. Trust in church is really low. Some of it is its own problem, its own doing. Trust in news, of course, right now. Trust in politicians and our political system. Trust in all sorts of institutions is at all-time lows. But it goes beyond trust of an individual or a group to an institution. Trust in each other. This is what I was really getting at before. How it's hard to trust if we're not all speaking the same language. And I don't mean that in a literal sense of, oh, we all have to speak English and all that. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that at all. I have a lot of trust for people that don't speak English, but my gosh, we're still speaking the same language. It goes beyond just the verbal words that are being used, right? Um, you get into other forms of trust. This has to do with, again, you can see this into other rhetoric around issues. You see this in some of the statements that Charlie Kirk had made around race, around immigration, around sexuality and gender. There's a lot of trust issues going on there, a lot of fear that are really coming out in his statements. Great replacement theory, conspiracy theory is really a trust issue, and it's fear based in that, and it becomes extremely dangerous. All these things become extremely dangerous to the groups who are then kind of deemed as others or are dehumanized in some way or considered to have less mental capacity or intelligence or are the targets of violence. Uh, Trust. That's a big issue. We're not even close to even acknowledging that as a society, let alone dealing with it. There was an article which struck me, and it was in Inc. magazine, September 17th, just this past week of this. And here's the title: What separates the most influential leaders from everyone else comes down to one word. You want to guess what that one word is? No, it's not trust, even though I've been talking about that. It's congruence. Congruence. The subtitle of this is Without It, You Are Prone to Burnout, Self Sabotage, and Disengagement from Work. I think that's being nice. I think it's also being a little individualistic in that. I think congruence goes to a lot bigger things than just how that type of thing. But really, this is an article that applies to the larger segment of society. Um, what what's most interesting to me as I read this was the examples here. Like congruence is the experience of being deeply aligned, where your inner world, your values, beliefs, emotions, and purpose is in sync with your outer world, your actions, decisions, and leadership presence. That's exactly right. Another paragraph: living and leading in congruence means showing up the same in every room because you're not switching masks. It's making decisions from a grounded place rather than reacting to pressure, ego, or performance anxiety. I read this and I thought, well, yeah, well, don't people normally try to be congruent? Try to be congruent? No, apparently not. I guess I'm the crazy one who thinks that congruency is vital. This gets into trust into this, right? I am more convinced than ever before, regardless of what we're talking about, whether we're talking about Charlie Kirk, the rhetoric, the things that he stood for or claimed to stand for versus what he actually said. I don't even know where all they go with that. Um, Whether we're talking about in the larger sense of our country, the aspirations that we claim versus how we have lived, are incongruent. They are very incongruent. You have the Declaration of Independence, and of course, then we can get into a debate of who was it actually written for and all this type of stuff, right? But we do have aspirations, national aspirations, and I don't mean that as far as conquering and all that. I mean freedom for all. That's an aspiration that this country claims. And then we have restrictions on voting. We have criminalizing the homeless. We have all sorts of history with racism and Jim Crow laws and segregation and a criminal justice system that, oh gosh, all sorts of stuff, right? You get into all sorts of things, right? There's not congruence. This is the battle that has been going on in this country since the beginning. I'm convinced more than ever that if we're ever going to deal with any of these things, that it starts with us being able to see the humanity of others, that we have to learn their language. We have to learn their language to know what it is that they're actually talking about. Not that we have to agree with it, not that we have to like it. We can be completely opposed to it. But first, we have to understand what is it they're actually talking about? Why? What's the fear? Because if we're ever going to get to the heart of some of these things, we have to understand the fear. Now, the reason why I'm coming to this, I'm going to give you a book recommendation before we go here at the end of the hour. It's a book that I read recently. It's called Good Reasonable People. Here it is. It's by Keith Payne. The Psychology Behind America's Dangerous Divide. Highly recommend this book. Sorry for the cough. Ugh. I want to, it came out, let's see here, 2024. So it's a recent book. Good Reasonable People. Essentially, the argument that Keith Payne is making is that everyone believes that they are a good, reasonable person. Everyone believes that about themselves. Doesn't matter who we're talking about. Charlie Kirk believed that about himself. I believe that about myself. My gosh, even probably Adolf Hitler probably believed that about himself. That doesn't make it so or anything like that. I'm telling you, this is what Keith Payne is. And by the way, he wrote this to have a better understanding of his relatives. He grew up in Kentucky. He's not conservative. He grew up in Kentucky and he wants to have a better understanding of his relatives who are conservative in Kentucky. This was his effort to better understand the people that he loves. Right? So everyone starts from a belief that they are a good, reasonable person. And the other part of this is that everyone believes that the groups that they identify with are also made up of good, reasonable people. This is the belief. He calls it the psychological bottom line. The reason why he calls it the psychological bottom line is because this is the bottom line. And regardless of what happens, we will defend our belief about ourselves and the groups that we identify with as being good, reasonable people. Now, this is where it gets complicated. And this is where we see a lot of a mistake in how to deal with this, right? This is where you see a whole lot of fact checking going on, which honestly is probably a waste of time. If facts were the things that were going to change people's minds, well, then life would be different. But starting with fact checking is not the answer. That may be down the line, and that could be helpful down the line. But as the initial thing, it's not helpful. It actually turns people further away from those facts, from reality. Because people are going to defend their psychological bottom line, that they are a good, reasonable person, and the groups that they identify with are made up of good, reasonable people as well. And so what does that mean is that humans We'll find whatever information that we need to in order to defend that psychological bottom line. We will figure out whatever reasoning that we need to in order to make ourselves good, reasonable people. And the groups that we identify with are as good, reasonable people. Take that into consideration when you're taking a look at what's going on around Charlie Kirk. The people who are memorializing him and all this are starting with a belief that they are a good, reasonable person, and that the groups that they identify with and the people that they identify with are good, reasonable people as well. And they have made a determination that Charlie Kirk is a part of them, or part of their identity, and they're hearing what they want to hear about. And even the stuff that they don't necessarily, that they would have trouble with, maybe some of the things that I read also on the white Christian nationalist side of things, there is always going to be an excuse, or there's some way to turn that so that it becomes a reasonable and good argument. So hear what I'm saying. This is not a judgment about the arguments. Leave that behind, because if that's what you're going to focus on, we're never going to get anywhere. If all we focus on, and that's the first thing that we do, is focus on the truth and whatnot around statements, we're missing what the bottom line of for people is, that they start with an assumption that they are a good, reasonable person, and the groups that they identify are good, reasonable people. So that means, instead of starting with, why would somebody say this, as far as, oh, this is, maybe racist or whatever the case may be, if we want to actually get anywhere, the question has to be, what fear does this bring up? What do you feel you're losing? Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Why is this so important to be defended? Then we can start to hear, because now what we're doing is we're humanizing. A person is no longer just a set of beliefs and abstract ideas, right? We have problems because we have made issues into abstract things way up here, way up here. And now they're one-liners, and we've got facts and figures that look like bullets that are just weapons, and we're aiming them at each other, and we're shooting each other. But when we bring an abstract down to an enfleshed being, things start to change. We have now humanized. And I think ultimately, if you're looking at quotes that for me are really important, scripture quotes, I always look to Matthew 25 as a key thing. It's why I do so many of the things, like the things that at the break that I talked about. When were you hungry and I fed you? Were you thirsty? When were you a stranger? All that type of stuff. That's about seeing the humanity. It's about seeing the humanity. I don't have nice, easy answers for this. I don't think anybody does. But I do know this. We need to be able to see the humanity. Because if we can't see the humanity in our enemies, in our opponents, we can't see it in ourselves. And the humanity is this: we're not expected to be more than human. We're not called to be more than human. We're not called to be less. We're called to be human, which means that we have limitations. We don't know everything. We don't know it all. We're gonna screw up. We're gonna do some really terrible stuff. But we're human. And God is going to come to us because we can't get to God. Boy, I wish I could go on, but we're at the end of the time. I don't even know if I covered all sorts of things. I just asked for some grace. I asked for some grace and for some mercy in this, because it's not an easy topic. It's not an easy thing to talk about. There's a lot of stuff that I just don't know. I'm really struggling with a lot that's going on in these days. And I don't have answers. I don't think anybody does. But I'm hoping that we're able to see the humanity in each other. So with that, I'll see you next time. Bye.